Serbia recently showcased their latest M-84 tank upgrade, again, but this time with some improvements. I highly suggest you watch my previous video on the M-84 upgrade because this will be a sort of a follow-up to that. Now, as I said, the tank has been showcased to public, along with a lot of other military equipment, on a public military exhibition. So I took the opportunity and went there to see the M-84 and the new T-72B1MS White Eagle, and hopefully get some information. And I did. Tankers were open to questions from public, but of course they could not go too much into detail, and sadly entering the tanks was not allowed. Since most of the information about T-72B1MS is already out there, I focused mainly on M-84, now called M-84AS2. I just want to know that most of the information presented in this video is based on the observation of the tank, as well as from the answers I could get from the tankers. None of this is 100% official. Also, this can very well not be the final version of the tank, and we might see some changes done in the future. First and foremost, let's look at the external changes. The first thing that caught my eye is that they filled up the hull weak spot with ERA. On previous variant, the towing hooks were exposed on the hull and no ERA block could be mounted on top. Now we can see that it is fixed. The commander's cupola was also improved and is now much better. On the vehicle shown a year ago, the commander's cupola was still the same as an old M-84 tanks, and as you can maybe tell from the pictures and videos, the ERA mounted on top of the turret could cause visibility issues for the commander. The new cupola is lifted up and has better coverage with periscopes for an almost full 360-degree view. The commander's panoramic sight is now Safran Paseo NS, which is very good. It's a fully stabilized sight with third-generation thermal imaging system and integrated laser rangefinder. The thermal imager can detect tank-sized targets up to 18 km, gives the ability to recognize targets at 9.5 km and identification at 5.5 km, which is extremely good. Of course, this is most definitely under perfect conditions and you won't always have those. And of course, the tank still has a remote weapon station with integrated thermals, which is a great plus. In my previous video on this tank, I speculated that the thermal sight might be integrated for the gunner, and suggested that the Serbian DNNS2 with integrated thermals might be installed. And the tankers pretty much confirmed that both gunner and commander have thermals. This is even further confirmed by the pictures from the exercise, where a clear, sharp break in the sight is visible, which is identical to the composition of the thermal sight presented many years ago. Now, the exact information about such sight is not available. We don't know the generation of the thermal, no detection range, nothing. But in my opinion, even first generation thermals beat the best passive image intensifiers out there, and certainly beat the ones previously present on the M-84. According to the tankers, the engine is 840 horsepower, which most likely means that the engine is the improved 780 horsepower engine. I said in my previous video that the 1000 horsepower engine upgrade would be ideal, but that even the 840 one would be better than the 780 horsepower one used by base M-84 tanks. And it seems like they are actually slightly upgrading the engines, or using the already upgraded ones from some time ago. Of course, with added weight, this is still not enough, and can't be compared to the most modern MBTs, which have much more powerful engines, but is better than it what used to be for sure. I asked if the tank has a steering wheel and if it has air conditioning, and both answers are no. It still has the older stick steering system and there is no AC in the tank. And it can get really hot in Serbia during summers. I believe it was almost 40 degrees Celsius that day alone, and driving in a steel box at that heat is definitely not pleasant. Other things are also the same as on previously presented tank. Laser warning receivers, positioning system and so on. Go watch my older video if you want to know more about those features. Another thing that was presented on the exhibition was the new APF-SDS projectile. I talked about it in my previous video, how it's a license-built Israeli projectile and so on. I tried to take a picture of the projectile so you can see how it's not much longer than the old M-88, which is a clone of the Soviet 3BM-15. But the penetration difference is substantial, mainly because of the projectile's composition and length to diameter ratio. The penetration of the new projectile is 550mm at 100 meters and 460mm at 2 kilometers. 3BM-15 is said to have around 300mm of penetration at 2 kilometers, which means it's around 50% of an improvement over the older projectile. The sources also state that it can penetrate up to 520mm lost thickness of a plate angled at 61 degrees at 2 km. It should be noted though that the RHA penetration is not really that much relevant. The projectile can probably perform even better against modern composites than 3B M-15 would, so the penetration improvement can be extremely drastic. And the best thing is that it's compatible with old autoloaders and guns, which means no changes to that department were necessary. That would be all. If you like my content, you can consider supporting me on Patreon, and if you can't, leave a like on the video or subscribe to the channel if you're new. It also helps a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.